Good morning. Welcome back to Planet Doug Behind the Scenes for Saturday, November 12th, 2022. It's about 6:45 in the morning. I hear the colony of crows out there cawing away as they're anticipating the sun coming up, and I'm hoping the sun is up today and not the rain. I've been thinking lately that I really have to pay more attention to weather patterns. I have this terrible history, lately anyway, of ignoring seasons. I mean, the one thing I know that I've learned in my lifetime is that in Southeast Asia, if you're going to the Philippines, places like that, you know, October, November, December, into January, those months are your friends. Those are the best times of year. You want to do the Mae Hong Son loop by scooter in Thailand, you know, go in November, October, you know, the rains have ended, the rice fields are full and green, there's activity everywhere. I mean, that is the best time. I have it drilled into my head that the best time to go anywhere is always the fall. What I think of as the fall in Canada. Anyway, you know, September, October, November, December, you know, sort of the fall. So, you know, when I was in Thailand and then my visa options there were coming to an end, and it was, you know, the border with Malaysia was open. You know, great, I can cross the border, come into Malaysia, do things here, and it'll be the best time of year. But what I completely overlooked is that for whatever reason, Malaysia is the opposite of everywhere else. And this is the worst time of year to be here. This is the monsoon season, and it just rains all the time. Well, not all the time. I mean, it rains every day, you know, sort of in the afternoon, but it can be cloudy all day. But basically, this is the rainy season. And I just completely overlooked that fact. I was just going on autopilot, thinking ahead to, oh, it's going to be October, November, December, and that's the best weather everywhere, isn't it? And it is if you're going to the Philippines, if you're going to Indonesia, if you're going to Thailand, if you're going everywhere in this part of the world, I guess, except Malaysia. And I guess this might be why I think of myself as a rain god. I've made that joke a number of times. I've borrowed it from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, a book by Douglas Adams, where there is a man who is actually a rain god but isn't aware of it, and his entire life, everywhere he goes around the world, it just rains everywhere he goes. And it turns out it's because he is a rain god and the clouds love him so much, they worship him, and they just follow him everywhere he goes, and they rain on him out of love because he is the rain god. And I've often joked that I am the rain god because it rains everywhere I go. And it could be because I'm just a dummy abroad. I just happen to go places during the rainy season without even realizing it. I never used to be so dumb. I mean, I deliberately went to a number of countries on bike trips in particular, and I plan very much to be there in the dry season. I was smart enough to do that when I was cycling. I knew that rain when you're cycling, for me, is miserable. I don't want to waterproof everything. I don't want to ride in the rain. When it rains, I just stay in my hotel room. I stay in my tent. I don't even go outside when it rains. I'm not one of these guys to have a full set of Ortlieb pannier bags, everything fully waterproof, you know, rain jacket, rain pants, rain booties. And then when it rains, I just keep riding anyway. No. If I wake up in the morning and I'm on a bike tour, I look outside and it's raining, I just stay. I stay in my tent, I stay in my hotel. I'm not about cycling in the rain, so I would deliberately plan to go to this or that country in the dry season when I'm going there on a bicycle. But apparently when I'm not on a bicycle, I just turn into an utter dummy, and I just waltz off into Malaysia during the monsoon season, thinking it's going to be warm and sunny all day, every day, and the weather's going to be perfect. But anyway, yeah, I really have to pay more attention to the seasons. And I was thinking of that in particular because of my interests and the things I look for on YouTube. I'm being fed a constant feed of traveling YouTubers. And I can see all these YouTubers that are lounging on beaches in the Philippines. Because that, I mean, that's where you're supposed to be right now. You know, in this month, you're supposed to be in the Philippines. Everybody knows that, but not me. Apparently, I thought I was supposed to be in Kuala Lumpur, you know. So I was out yesterday again. I went to Vinijaya for dinner, my usual dinner or lunch, either late lunch, early dinner kind of place. I'm at Vinijaya. And while I'm in there, enjoying my very good dinner, and I'm watching another episode of Season 5 of The Handmaid's Tale. And then while I'm there, of course, I hear this rain thundering down. I look outside, and yeah, the rain is just pouring down. There's been these heavy downpours, pretty much almost like clockwork, in the late afternoon here in KL. And so I was thinking, I'm supposed to be on a beautiful beach in the Philippines, you know, and here I am in a monsoon season in Malaysia. Yeah, that's how I roll, apparently. But at the moment, it's not a huge problem because I have been spending a lot of my time indoors. Yesterday, I was editing a video from Penang for a good chunk of the day. I still have a big archive of experiences on Penang that I shot video of, and I have to deal with that. And this is, again, one of my early videos from Penang. It's quite an amusing one, because I was in Penang and I wanted to go out exploring, doing things, shooting video, but I didn't really know where to start. I'd been to Penang before many times, so I had been to Penang Hill, you know, I'd been to Little India, I'd been to the Klan jetties before, I'd been to all these regular attractions that they have on Penang. I'd been to all these places, so there wasn't like an obvious thing to do, like, oh, wake up and go to Penang Hill and take the funicular train to the top, and, you know, all those typical things that you do as a tourist on Penang, I've already done. And I don't know, I was having trouble coming to grips with the place. And as I explained in the video that I shot on that particular day, the one I was editing yesterday, I had this idea to start with one street, because I noticed the street called Beach Street, a main street in Georgetown, in the main, you know, UNESCO World Heritage Site District. And I was wondering, where did that name come from and what does it mean, Beach Street? And I started doing research into that street, and I became interested in its history because it was closely tied with the history of Georgetown, of Penang, of Malaysia, of Southeast Asia in general. So it was an interesting project, I thought, and my idea was to take one of my cameras, and this is mainly what I want to talk about, is the camera side of things. This is behind the scenes, after all, and behind the scenes is often about technology. But what I did was I took one of my cameras and I went to the very start of Beach Street, and my idea was to walk all the way from one end to the other, filming everything of interest and just talking about what I had learned about Beach Street. But watching that video now, in retrospect, I have to do some pretty careful editing because it was early in my time on Penang, and I was still kind of a dummy. I'd only done superficial reading, so I was saying a lot of things that were either completely wrong or at least inaccurate or misleading. The bulk of everything I said is still there. I just did a little bit of vacuuming, editing, vacuuming. You know, I deleted something that I talked about here, a little bit of what I talked about there, because what I said was completely wrong, and it put people or places in a poor light because I didn't understand the history yet. So that was kind of interesting to edit the video and listen to myself babbling like a moron about things I know nothing about. And there are still lots of things in the video that I'm super generalizing, and I've learned later on that what I said was not exactly right. It was a little bit more nuanced than that, you know, what happened in terms of the history. But I left that in there because in the video I even said that, you know, I kept saying, you know, I don't really know the history, but I read this and I read this and I have this general idea that this is what happened. So there's a lot of that going on in the video. But there's also a lot of camera issues because while I was in Penang, I got a camera lens. Actually, I switched lenses this morning, by the way. I haven't mentioned that. But I was given this lens by a mystery benefactor, which is an amazing lens, and it has kind of transformed my life. This is the Panasonic 12 to 35 millimeter, I think f2.8, constant aperture across the full zoom range. And it's more of a pro lens, a premium lens, than what I had been using. There's no comparison compared to what I had been using. So using this lens has been an absolute joy. So I wanted to go out and use this lens and test it, and I put it on my Panasonic G85 camera. And I walked from one end of Beach Street to the other, holding my G85 on the end of a thin selfie stick with this lens on it. And as much as I love this lens, it is a little bit of a heavy one. It's a bit of a beast. Got a lot of glass to cover the 12 to 35 range, a lot of glass to get that f2.8 aperture. Beautiful lens though, smooth zoom action, really, really nice lens. But my Panasonic G85 is not good at focusing. So as I'm walking along, I'm watching the video now, I'm editing it, and I'm just like zoo, 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 zooming in out of focus all the time, constantly. The camera is locked, on focus on the buildings behind me instead of my face, or it's just always focused on the wrong thing. And even when it focuses on something, it just sort of goes in and out of focus all the time. So that was really a big part of that experience. Plus the camera, this lens, as much as I like it, it's not that wide at 12 millimeters for micro four thirds. That's a wide angle, but then it's not super wide. And then you have to crop in a little bit when you turn on full stabilization. So it crops in a little bit more. And then the weight of the camera, you can't really hold it far enough away. But I was trying my best. But my arm would get tired, and over time, I would gradually bend my elbow because I just couldn't hold my hand out like that any longer. And then the camera would get closer and closer and closer to my face until it's like, right here, and then going in and out of focus and bouncing up and down. Anyway, it was just not a very good video experience. And then as I'm editing the video, I was looking at it. And at the time, on that day, I knew that this had happened because after I shot the whole street with my G85, then I stopped at a restaurant called Chinatown, a very famous place on Beach Street. And I went in there to grab a cup of coffee, and I was going to sort of summarize my video. That was going to be my conclusion to the video, my coffee or breakfast at Chinatown. And I reviewed some of the video while I was sitting at the table enjoying my breakfast and coffee. And I saw that the video was not as good as I had hoped. I didn't watch all of it, obviously, but I could tell that it was too tight and the focus wasn't good, and there's a lot of bouncing and jittering. So I wasn't very happy with that. So what I ended up doing was I decided to cover my bases, and I turned around. I went all the way back to the beginning of Beach Street, and I mounted my 360 camera on that same selfie stick. No, different selfie stick, a thinner one. And I walked the entire length of Beach Street a second time and shot the entire experience a second time, but in 360 video this time. And I thought somehow I could blend those two videos together. But I think what I'm going to end up doing is edit and post Beach Street from the point of view of the G85, just edit that, package it, post that, and then I'm going to do the 360 video as a completely separate video because it would just be way too much work, way too complicated and confusing, and involve way too much editing to try and blend the two together. And I don't think it wouldn't work anyway. So I'm going to make two separate videos, one G85 video, one Insta360 One X2 video about the same experience. But that was a big chunk of my day yesterday. I'm still not done editing the Beach Street video from the G85 perspective. I haven't even started on the 360 video yet. So at least if I'm inside editing video, then of course it doesn't matter that it's pouring rain outside. That's a great thing about being a YouTuber and shooting video as one of your daily activities and editing video. When the weather is poor, you know, you got a lot of editing to do anyway, so you stay inside and yeah, you keep busy. And other than the rain and other than editing video, I had some interesting experiences yesterday. I didn't shoot any video of this, which is why I'm talking about it now. But I was out at Vinijaya having an early dinner, late lunch, early dinner, and pouring rain outside. I stayed there until the rain stopped. I waited and waited and waited. Luckily, I had The Handmaid's Tale to keep me company on my tablet, and I just watched this episode until the rain finally dwindled enough that I could go outside with my umbrella. And I went outside, and then I remembered something that Daryl from Wander Eats told me. Ages ago, he sent me a link to a food court here in Chinatown. I was talking on video yesterday that I'm having a lot of difficulty finding little restaurants here that I like, you know, that I can go to every day for lunch or breakfast or dinner. I'm having trouble establishing this kind of a food routine here, like a pleasant one for me. And then I remember that Daryl told me about this food court here. And you know, I'd been praising Yummy Cottage in Penang so much, and he found this place in Chinatown and sent me the link on Google Maps and said, "Hey, here's a food court right, you know, very close to where you are. I mean, you know, you can check that place out." So as I was leaving Vinijaya yesterday, I remembered that, and I thought, "Oh, yeah, I forgot about that." And then I looked up the address of this place, you know, where it was on Google Maps. I had to track it down on WhatsApp because Daryl sent me this message on WhatsApp a long time ago, and I had to scroll way backwards to find it. But I found it, and then I went there to check it out. So that was the first experience I had. And I had mixed feelings when I saw this place. It's called Sun Tang Food Court. Pretty sure that's what it is. I was wrong. I just looked it up. It is Tang City Food Court. Tang City Food Court. So I went there to look at it for myself, and when I got there, it looked pretty miserable. This was Friday, late afternoon, heading into the evening, and I don't know, and it was raining pretty badly, so, you know, the whole Chinatown market was empty. There was nobody there. It was pretty grim and gray and wet and kind of sad overall, and there were no visitors there, no tourists. And I don't know if that had any effect or whether that's just how Tang City is, but when I found it and I went in, the whole place was pretty much shut down. So it really was a real food court. At the very front was an economy rice. That's what they call them here, I guess, like a buffet spread. It's called economy rice. So it was an economy rice place. And normally, I guess, it would have lots of trays of dishes. You get your rice, and then you can pick and choose what you want. But there was nothing there. The whole place was closed. There was no food. Nobody was there. And then all around the edges were maybe 10, 11 different food stalls and a drink stall. And interestingly enough, beer. It's a big beer drinking place, which I wasn't aware of. And but most of the food stalls were closed as well. Like almost everything was closed. There was one place that sold Burmese food, like it said Myanmar food, I think. So they sold food from Myanmar. And there was a Thai place was open, and a Vietnamese, no, it wasn't open. The Vietnamese place wasn't open, but I could see on the signs it was Vietnamese. And they make, you know, Vietnamese noodles, you know, po or pho, po. I never know how to pronounce it. And yeah, there was really nothing open, and because of the gray weather and the rain and the drizzle, it was just a sad looking place. And maybe if it was open and bustling and there's food everywhere, it would have made a better impression on me, but it didn't look very nice, to be honest. And I was looking up all the reviews on Google Maps, you know, the Google Maps reviews, and there's a bit of a variety there, but the overall feeling seems to be it's not a great place. You know, certainly local people don't like it. Malaysians know better than to eat here. It's kind of set up for tourists, I think. It's a bit of a, I don't know if you call it a tourist trap or something. But all of that market, the peddling street market, is designed for visitors, foreign visitors. It's not a local place at all. And I think Tang City historically was a local place. I mean, it has a traditional feeling to it. You can tell it's been there for a long time and has a history. And they even have a couple of shops in there that are, famous ones, famous for making a particular dish and being known for being very good at that dish. But then I think in recent decades, it just lost its traditional roots and just became a place that's part of the normal, Chinatown market, and it caters more to foreigners, I think, and yet a kind of foreigner who, say, is in the peddling street market, kind of looks around and goes, oh, this is too touristy for me. They might dismiss it as a tourist trap, and they want more of a local experience. And then they go walking down this alleyway, and then they see this food court. They go in there and they're like, this is real Malaysia. And it is much more real Malaysia than the rest of the Chinatown market. It looks local, it looks authentic, basically. So according to all the reviews I read, the quality has gone down and the price has gone up and the hygiene has just tanked. I think local people in particular really focused on that in their reviews, and they comment that the whole area is really kind of dirty. A lot of reviews were commenting on finding a little cockroach or a little worm or a little maggot in their food and complaining about that, and complaining about the high prices and saying that you can get much better food at a cheaper price elsewhere, because this is a tourist trap. And there was some high pressure sales when it comes to having beer. I guess you can get beer there, and then people are constantly coming over to say beer, at your table. So anyway, it didn't sound like a great place, but I'll go there. I'll go there for a meal just to have the Tang City Court experience. One of my local places. I didn't have anything last night because I'd already had dinner at Vinijaya. And then I walked out of there, and I decided to, instead of following the main street, I spotted this alleyway. And I was just thought, I'll just duck down this alleyway. It struck me as kind of a shortcut. And then I took this shortcut, I hit a dead end, and I had to do a turn to the right. And then on my left, I saw this really odd looking place. There was like a wall and all these openings, and I'm looking inside, and it looked like a fancy shopping mall or something in there. There was just what in the world is that? It was like something I hadn't seen before. It was like a brand new place in Chinatown that I knew nothing about. And I'm looking through all these gaps, and I see a fancy burger place, and what looked like a wine bar and a coffee shop, through all these gaps in the wall. I thought, what in the world is that? It was like a mirage. It was really weird. So I found one of the openings, and I ducked inside, and the mirage was real. And I'm walking around looking at this place and thinking, how have I never seen this place before? It's huge. It was like a big area. This was on the ground. I didn't know it at the time, but there's like a ground floor in this place, and then it goes up many floors with stuff everywhere. But I was still just down on ground level, and I'm looking around at all these places and thinking, what is this? I had no idea what it was or how had I never seen it before. And I eventually made my way to the front of it, and at the front I saw the name. And then I went outside on the street, crossed the street so I could get a look at the whole building. And then the penny dropped. And this was another place that Daryl from Wander Eats had told me about. This was Rex KL. And Daryl had mentioned it to me, and he mentioned it in kind of an offhand way as it was the day I was moving into this hotel, into the Kojoy. And we're walking along, and we're talking about shooting YouTube videos, this, that, and the other thing. And he says, have you ever gone here? And he said the name of this place. And I guess he said Rex, but I didn't make a mental note of it at the time. And he said something about how it was a movie theater that had been converted into shops and things. And yeah, I think he mentioned something about a bookstore and coffee shop. And he knows I'm very interested in coffee shops. And I used to be a real big reader before video took over my life. So, I have an interest in bookstores too. And he mentioned this place, and then I kind of mentally filed it along with this food court that he told me about and made a mental note to track it down someday, but I never got around to it. And there I was. I had stumbled across Rex KL. And yeah, so today, actually, my plan for today is to go back to Rex KL with one of my GoPro, with a GoPro, maybe the Insta360, maybe the GoPro, I'm not sure, and then explore the place because I'm really, really curious about it. I've got their website queued up, and I'll tell you a little bit about it. It was a theater. The Rex Theater is what this building was originally, founded in 1947, the Rex Cinema. Then there was a big fire in 1972. The Rex Cinema was rebuilt as a state-of-the-art single-screen theater with over 1,000 seating capacity. Yeah, must have been an amazing place back then. But then there was another fire in 2002, and that pretty much was the end of its life as a theater. So I guess after the fire in 2002, it never reopened as a theater again. It was just shut down and was a derelict building, I guess. But then 17 years later, it reads, a group of creative entrepreneurs decided to reactivate the 60,000 square foot building as part of the mission to rejuvenate the forgotten part of KL by injecting new businesses, cultural agenda, and creative programs into this otherwise dilapidated hidden gem. So they describe it now as a social space for creative and cultural activities, a place in the city that aims to make a difference. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty much all I know about it at this point, what I read on their website and what I saw in a few places. So it has many different floors, and on the ground floor is called the background. And the background is basically their food court. So you've got some like artisanal hamburgers and a wine bar and other places, selling local Asian food from different countries, I guess. Just glancing around at the prices, we're not talking, major upscale prices, but higher than typical market fare. Like the burgers look to be around 20 ringgit or something like that. I didn't look carefully at everything, but it's call it mid-scale. It's not a low budget place, but it's not like super expensive either. It's not high end, sort of mid-range. And that's all the background down on the main floor. And then as you go higher and higher, I guess you find all kinds of things. The bookstores up there somewhere, maybe there's coffee shops up there. And then there are exhibition spaces and performance spaces and stages, and I guess there are a lot of activities that go on there, either paid or free. In the website they talk about how most of them are just free activities. So they had a grand vision for this place as a cultural grassroots space where the community can really use for whatever the community wants to do. You've got commercial, stores and coffee shops and restaurants, but mixed in, you've got also these performance spaces and spaces that community groups can use, put on exhibitions, and I assume art and dance and theater and tutorials and different subjects. I'm not quite sure what all goes on there. So that was their vision for the place. Whether it has lived up to that vision, that I don't know. Like, is it a thriving cultural center as they envisioned, or is it really just kind of a food court with a few other things on top? I don't really know. I don't know whether it's a bustling, active place most days, Because when I was there, again, this was a rainy, grim, gray afternoon, and nobody was in Chinatown at all. So background, the background on the main floor was completely empty. And then I didn't go upstairs at all. I'm saving that exploration for today. That's what I'm going to do today. But yeah, maybe it's kind of empty all the time, because what struck me is that I know I've walked up and down that street a lot. I don't think this place existed when, well, maybe it did, 17 years later. No, I don't think it really existed when I was in Kuala Lumpur before. They probably opened up just as I was leaving Malaysia or after I left to go to Myanmar and then Thailand. So I don't think I saw it in the old days because it wasn't open. But this time I've walked up and down that street quite a few times, and yet I never saw it. It's a big building and there's a ton of stuff going on in there, but somehow I managed to walk down the street. And I'm always looking, I'm always shooting video, so my eyes are always wandering around looking for things, looking at things, and yet somehow I walked past this huge cultural center and I never saw it. Just sort of, I don't know why, the way the building looks, the way it blends in with the background, I'm not really sure, but I never saw it, I never noticed it. And I wonder if that tone, being able to walk right by it without even seeing it, has that led to it being kind of anonymous, and maybe it didn't really turn into this grand vision. It didn't live up to the grand vision of its founders, and maybe it's not being used to its full potential. Or maybe it's like a really rich, exciting, active place. I don't really know. But anyway, certainly an interesting place for me to go check out, which is what I'm going to do today. And very exciting for me, and probably the most exciting part of this whole experience, there is a bike shop on the ground floor. And I'm walking through this place looking at the hamburgers and the wine bar and the fried foods and all these different things. And then out of the corner of my eye, I see something that says something about a bike shop. I'm like, come on, no way. It's like, what? So I go over there, and there is a small, very interesting kind of a boutique style bike shop called Outsiders. Is that the full name? Outsiders Bikes. And it was open when I went up to the doors, and I managed to talk to a guy that runs the place or works there, Shidi. He gave me his name card, Shidi, and he spoke English very well, and he's clearly passionate about bikes, knows a lot about them. And what really jumped out at me about this place, Outsiders Bikes, is they actually had touring equipment. And that's very rare for a bike shop of any variety, and particularly rare for a bike shop in Malaysia, like in Kuala Lumpur. Touring gear is something you generally have to order online and have shipped to you, because it's kind of a niche product, and bike shops can't really stock all this touring equipment, for very few customers. You basically have to order it in. But anyway, at this place I walked in and I said, wow, look, there's a pannier bag. And I rarely see pannier bags in bike stores, but they had one there. And then over on this side, I saw some Surly handlebars. And Surly is an American bike company known for making traditional steel-framed touring bikes. Very high-quality bikes. They're high quality at a little bit more of an affordable price. Surly is kind of the working man's touring bike. It's an affordable touring bike, because the modern touring bikes by specialty companies, they can cost as much as a car, certainly as much as an expensive motorcycle. They're very expensive machines these days. But Surly kind of has that market underneath that. They're still expensive bikes. Any touring bicycle is going to be expensive, but it's not going to, just blow a hole in your bank account. It's sort of mid-range expensive. But anyway, they had a couple of Surly handlebars there. And I know the name Surly. I've been familiar with Surly most of my life. And I was like, wow, surly handlebars, you know, pannier bags. You know, I'm looking around, and this was a bike shop that knows about touring gear. And, you know, talking with Sheedy, he said he used to work for quite a while at other bike shops, or maybe one other major bike shop here in KL. And he said he had a lot of experience with foreigners, because foreigners like me would show up in Malaysia. They're going around the world on their touring bikes, and their bikes need to be worked on. They need parts, whatever. So over the years, he encountered a lot of foreigners on touring bikes going, you know, major, you know, regional trips around Asia or around the world trips, things like that. So he's very aware of the whole touring bike culture. So, you know, I got to chat with him a little bit. And yeah, sparked a lot of thoughts in my head, because also the other day, a friend of mine sent me a link to a fascinating product, because, let's see. I had to grab some things for a show and tell, because recently I've been doing little bike rides around Kuala Lumpur and shooting some video with my Insta360 One X2 camera. And this is the selfie stick you use with the Insta360 camera. You know, it expands to like about 4 feet long. And I've been having an issue because it mounts with a tripod thumb screw on the bottom. So you get one of these things, and it basically just screws into this tripod thumb screw, which works fine as a tripod. Like, this is what it's designed to do, basically to stand up straight. You know, that's what a tripod is. Tripods generally stand up straight. So when you use a tripod thread, you generally do this, and that's fine. But as soon as you put a camera on the end of this and put it on an angle and then stretch it out 4 feet and then have it bouncing on a bike as you're going over bumps, this is going to snap off for sure. So I've been thinking about that, and I've been trying to come up with ways of mounting this in a more secure way. Something, instead of using the tripod base, because you're not supposed to use it like this, I don't think. I want something that clamps around it and holds the whole base, just like a hand would, like that. And I was looking at all these hardware store options where you buy clamps that they use for plumbing pipes and things, and you can adapt it to put on the bike, and you attach this thing to that thing, attach 2 more things and screw it all together and zip tie it and duct tape it, and then you can do this. You know, coming up with this real crazy jury rig system that seemed to be the only option available to try, you know, figure out some way to clamp this on. But then a friend of mine sent me a link to a product available on Lazada designed to do exactly that. It's a company in China. They call it like a monopod holder, because this is a monopod, you know, just one stick. And they designed this thing that has kind of a clamp like this on one end. The clamp goes over top of your bike's handlebars, but then instead of having a tripod mount on the other end, they have a second clamp oriented at 90 degrees to this one, and the second clamp goes around the base of the monopod. And that is exactly what I was thinking of, exactly what I was looking for. And it turns out that this product that I assumed did not exist anywhere in the world, in fact, it did exist, and a company in China makes it. So I'm in the process of ordering one of these. It's not 100% perfect. I can see some issues with this product. For one thing, it can only tilt up and down. So if this is facing toward, you know, the front, towards the front of the bike, it can go up and can go down, but it can't go side to side. The only orientation change is up and down, which is not ideal, but you know, you can live with it. It just means that your camera is always going to be, you know, directly in front of the bike. You can't angle it to the side, you know, to the left or to the right. And it has no quick release mechanism. The whole mounting mechanism is done with Allen wrenches, which is good in a way because you get a very strong you're using a bolt and a wrench to tighten it down, and that gives you a very firm grip. But at the same time, if you want to pull this out of your clamp, you basically have to get out your toolkit and take Allen wrenches and then unscrew the bolts in order to take it out. So you almost want to buy a second selfie stick and leave it mounted on the bike permanently, because it would be such a pain to kind of remove it and put it on, remove it, put it back in over and over again. But anyway, this product exists, and I was busy figuring out how to order one and how long it would take to get here. But then I realized, not to get too super technical here, my handlebars have no space on them. They're very weird handlebars, the way I put them together. Plus, I can't remember why this happened, and it's something I've regretted ever since it happened, and I've kept meaning to fix it, but I've just never gotten around to it. It's just that when I ordered my bike, this particular bike that I still have today, in the ordering process, it got all mixed up somehow. And the bike that arrived after months of delay was not the bike that I had originally ordered. All the components were different. And there was something weird, I can't remember what it was, or something. It came with different shifters and different brakes than it was supposed to, than as it was listed in the catalog in which I had ordered. It came with all this, a different set, and the way things turned out, according to the people at the bike shop, I had to cut part of the handlebar off. So, it was a certain width, and then it was too long, basically too wide, and they said, well, we have to cut an inch off this side and an inch off this side in order to make everything fit together. And I don't remember why this was an issue, but that's what they had to do, and they convinced me that it was something that was good to do, so they cut big chunks off both sides. And ever since then, the handlebar has always felt too narrow to me. It's not wide enough. And part of the problem that is created for me is that there's very little room on the handlebars for mounting accessories, because you want to mount a headlight, a cycle computer, and then today, of course, you want to mount a camera and a smartphone and a GPS, and like a cockpit of a fighter jet. So if I got one of these clamps for the monopod to mount on the handlebars, I can't really use the handlebars I have because there just isn't any space. There's nowhere to put it. So that got me thinking about finally changing the handlebars, and then I just happened to walk into Outsiders Bikes, and it just happens to have a bit of touring equipment, and they just happen to have very wide, surly handlebars. I measured them. I travel with a measuring tape. I always have a measuring tape in my knapsack, believe it or not, because I'm always measuring things. And I whipped out my measuring tape, and it was like they're 29 inches from end to end. These are like wide. I think on my bike right now, it's about 23 inches, 22, 23 inches. And these ones are like 29 inches. They're like super wide by comparison. And if I change my handlebars over to one of these surly bars, then I'll have lots of space for mounting accessories. And again, not to get too super technical, while I was there, I noticed they were working on a bike, like a customer's bike. They brought it in for repairs or something, and they had it mounted there that they were working on it. And that customer had a Jones H-bar. And if you're a cyclist, you probably know what those are. A company in the United States called Jones, and years ago they designed a specialty handlebars. Very, very unusual handlebars called the H-bars because of the way the original ones were shaped. Look like a twisted, distorted letter H. And they're very unusual. And so I saw that out of the corner of my eye, and I went over there and I started thinking, maybe the H-bar is the way to go. I remember looking into them in the past, and for various reasons, didn't seem like it would fit on my bike and it wouldn't really work, but I started looking at them and thinking, maybe it's time to go with an H-bar. Maybe let's try that and see whether it will work on my bike or not, and then I might have plenty of space for mounting cameras and other accessories. So Yeah, last night after I visited Outsiders Bikes, I came back here. I told the guy I was going to go back there this morning, bring my bike, and he and I could look at my bike and we can talk about various options, for what I can do. It gets very complicated with bike components. You'd think you can just take off the handlebars, put on new ones, but with the shifters and the brake levers and things like that, it gets complicated. Certain components are not really compatible. So you can put the new handlebars on maybe, but then all your gears and shifters and things may not fit properly in the right positions. They have to match. So I have to basically test it out to see. But I'm going to go back there. But then last night as I was here, I was looking up the Jones H-Bar again, doing a lot of research into it. And one big issue with the H-Bar, I had to rummage around again for my next piece of show and tell. The major issue is the handlebar bag, because the H-Bar, the modern version of it, has kind of a big loop that goes all the way out. It's at the front of your bike. It's kind of a football, like a shape of a football almost, like a loop. And then because of that loop, your handlebar bag can't fit into the normal place where it goes on the handlebar stem, because you got a stem and then there's a loop here, and a handlebar bag is too wide to fit into that loop. So you're kind of stuck. They make their own version of a handlebar bag, like a football shaped one that kind of suspends from the loop, and you could use that. But I mean, I already have this one, and I kind of like the larger ones. I don't like the small one that they offer. And there is a way to mount this on the very front of the H-Bar, but to do that, you've got to do some real jury rigging. There's a guy out there who came up with a solution where you take a second handlebar stem and mount the so basically you end up with two handlebar stems, the main one still working as a handlebar stem, but then you have to attach a second handlebar stem just to be able to mount your handlebar bag. And then you got to get out hacksaws and saw it off and file it down and do all these crazy things. And then your handlebar bag is mounted way forward on the bike, and as you're turning the handlebars, this thing is moving quite a distance back and forth, and it kind of upsets the balance of the bike, the steering of the bike. And that for touring is not a big deal, I don't think. You're generally not moving so fast, that it matters that much. But the whole thing is like a pain in the butt, and it just wasn't clear to me that the H-Bar would really work after I gave it a lot of thought. And it's a major change to go from a regular straight bar to an H-Bar. That's a total transformation of the bike, and it could have all kinds of unintended consequences. And for that reason, I started thinking that maybe it would be safer just to go with something like the Surly bar, if that's compatible with my bike. And then I can still use my handlebar bag normally. It mounts normally as it's supposed to, right up against the handlebars, right on the original handlebar stem, so that wouldn't be an issue. And then because it's 29 inches wide, it will open up a lot of space in the middle, and there would be enough room to mount, a 360 camera and a GoPro mount and cycle computer and a headlight. There should be enough space on the bar to mount everything that I need. And yeah, anyway, that's what I'm going to do this morning. They open at 10 a.m., so I'm probably going to bring my bike. I'll just ride it over to the bike shop in background at Rex KL and have a chat with Sheedy at Outsiders Bikes and see, just have a chat with him. I really want to try out one of those Surly handlebars, though I did go to the Surly website to check out those handlebars and get the specifications for them. And I found out that Surly actually sells a full range, a whole different set of different models of specialty handlebars, and they might have a better one for me than the ones that they currently stock over there. They only had two in the whole store, and Surly might make one that would be a bit better for me than the two that they have in stock. And apparently they have a connection with Surly, so maybe they can order in whatever I want. But we shall see. And then I will, I'll probably shoot some video when I visit Outsiders Bikes, and then I'll shoot some video as I explore Rex KL from top to bottom and find out what is there. So that's going to be that is going to be my day today, and then after that I'll be editing my Beach Street videos. And perhaps I will end today's behind the scenes offering with a couple of pop culture thoughts, because also this weekend is a very big event that I'm actually quite excited about, the UFC 281. So the UFC is probably the world's biggest mixed martial arts league. In terms of an audience worldwide, who knows, it might not be the biggest. Like one championship here in Asia is pretty big too. They might even have a bigger audience than the UFC, I'm not sure. But the most well-known brand for mixed martial arts league is the UFC out of the United States. And they have a big pay-per-view event this weekend, UFC 281. Happening on Saturday at Madison Square Garden in New York City, Saturday New York time, so it's kind of Sunday Malaysia time. And I've been busy reading up on all the events there, and I'm kind of invested in the main event for some unusual reasons perhaps. But the main event is a middleweight championship bout between Israel Adesanya and Alex Pereira. And I'm invested in this a little bit because I don't really like Israel Adesanya. And yeah, I'll explain why in a minute perhaps. But Israel Adesanya has a very interesting history. He was originally a kickboxer. Like, he's now the UFC middleweight champion. And Alex Pereira, who's from Brazil, is the challenger. Israel Adesanya is from New Zealand. He was actually born in Lagos, Nigeria, but then he immigrated with his family when he was 10 years old out of Nigeria, and now he's a resident, a citizen of New Zealand. So he fights out of New Zealand, though he was born in Nigeria, and he was an extremely successful kickboxer. And Alex Pereira was also an extremely successful kickboxer. That's where they both started their fighting careers. And interestingly enough, they fought 2 times before, Israel and Alex. And both fights, Israel Adesanya lost. So he is the current UFC middleweight champion, but the challenger, he fought him 2 times before in kickboxing matches, and he lost both fights. Alex Pereira won. The first fight, he won by decision, and I guess it wasn't that clear-cut. There was some controversy. A lot of people thought Israel Adesanya actually won that fight, but the judges gave it to Alex Pereira. He won the fight. And the second time they met, Israel Adesanya was winning the fight. Most people agree that he was in control of the fight. And, well, he was in control of the fight until he wasn't, because Alex Pereira has a deadly left hook. Absolutely deadly. He caught Israel Adesanya with his left hook and knocked him out. Knocked him flat on his back and won the fight by knockout. And that was the only knockout loss in Israel Adesanya's career. So these two have a real history. They have a real grudge match going on this weekend. And personally, I'm rooting for Alex Pereira, and I actually think Alex Pereira is going to win, simply because he is a big, tough, no-nonsense kind of guy. Israel Adesanya has had an advantage over a lot of his opponents because of how good he is. I mean, he's a highly skilled kickboxer, skilled striker, but he's also 6'4", according to the official measurements. So he's a tall guy, extremely fast, extremely flashy, and very, very hard to hit. But something I've noticed about him is that ever since he switched to the UFC, I mean, he has an incredible record as a kickboxer. He's fought for many, many years, and he wins nearly all of his fights, and he has a lot of knockouts in his record as a kickboxer. But in the UFC, as an MMA fighter, nearly all of his wins have been by decision. So he's a very skilled fighter, like a striker, puncher, and kicker, and he uses that skill to take over the fight. He fights at range, they say, you know, keeps his distance and just punches and kicks the other guy and wins the fight by decision. But Alex Pereira, the Brazilian, he's also 6'4", and yet he seems to be a bigger man, like bigger, more heavily muscled, and he's a real power puncher. Israel Adesanya can punch you because he's such a skilled striker, but he may not knock you out. Alex Pereira, not quite as skilled, not as fast as Israel Adesanya, not as flashy, but when he punches you, you're knocked out. He's extremely strong and he hits hard. So I think he has a very good chance of winning this fight with Israel Adesanya. We shall see. And I guess to confess my own prejudices, I'm sort of rooting for Alex Pereira because Israel Adesanya is not my kind of guy, I guess. He's one of these athletes that once he became rich, you know, since he became the UFC middleweight champion, has a lot of sponsorships, you know, earns a lot of money, he's become a millionaire, and he just basically turned to a life of consumption, basically. So now he's suddenly wearing, you know, $20,000 Rolexes, strings of pearls, like white pearl necklaces, like 3 or 4 of them all at the same time, which is just kind of a weird thing for a fighter to do. And he buys, you know, $650,000 McLaren sports cars. He's basically gone for a life of luxury consumption with all the millions of dollars that he's earned. And I don't know, I like my fighters just to be plain fighters. As soon as they turn into multimillionaires, sort of like Conor McGregor becomes a multimillionaire, and now he's, you know, he's all about Rolls Royces and Lamborghinis and Ferraris and, you know, multi-$1,000 watches and gold and jewelry and yachts. I think Conor McGregor, does he have 2 yachts by now? You know, he bought like 2 of the fastest, fanciest mega yachts in the world, all of them multi-million-dollar yachts, and that whole thing just bothers me. You know, it's just not my kind of world. And when I see these guys go from basically very, very poor fighters, you know, climbing up the ranks, and then they get some success and they get millions of dollars, and then they turn into these guys roaming around on their, you know, $1 million Lamborghinis, driving to their $15 million mega yachts and strutting around, dripping with jewelry. It's just it's not a tone that I like to see in the UFC, you know, in MMA. It's just not my kind of world. And Alex Pereira, for me, is just a much more of a basic kind of guy, a no-nonsense fighter. And so I'm sort of, I'm rooting for him. He's my guy in the main event this weekend. So that's my pop culture life at the moment. I'm looking forward to seeing who's going to win this fight. And I'm hoping it's going to be my guy, Alex Pereira. And with that, I think I will shut down for this morning. I have to start doing other things. Yeah, should be an interesting day. Going to go check out Rex KL, go check out Outsiders Bikes. Yeah, looking forward to that. And hopefully the weather is nice. I haven't looked outside now. It's, yeah, after 7 in the morning now, so maybe the sun is up and I can see what the weather's going to be like. So that's it. And that's it for Behind the Scenes. And I'll see you in the next video.